For more on whether a Google breakup could actually happen and what it could mean for the stock, let's bring in Deepwater Asset's Gene Munster. Gene, so what do you think? If there were an announcement tomorrow that Google will be broken up, what would the shares do?
I think I'm leaning with Steve on this. I think it's up probably 5% plus. I think ultimately this could unlock 20% of value, put the probability at low, call it 15% that this ultimately some variation of this happens. But to answer your question, is that I think the sum of the parts do unlock value here. This exercise is a well-traveled road, as you mentioned, and typically we, with a company like this, I think that it's important to recognize that when things do get broken up, there's going to be a lot of agreements that will be quickly put in place that would be probably infuriate regulators, but ultimately I think the substance of how Google functions would remain relatively unchanged. But again, I think that this would unlock value.
What do you think is the most likely scenario in terms of how the broken up Google would look? And if you can sort of overlap that with what is the format in which Google will be optimized as a broken up company?
So the most likely scenario is that they break out their ad network. It's their ugly piece of the business. It's about 11% of revenue. It's actually been declining. This is kind of falls below the fold, but this has been long rumored by regulators to get broken out. For those of you who've been following Google a long time, this is the old double-click business. And so ultimately, I think that that was not as part of the reports today. It was related to Chrome and Android getting broken out. I don't know how they would do that. But I think that 15% probability that I put on some form of a breakup would be related to that ad network business. And it gives regulators some sort of a victory. And ultimately, I think investors' central question, Melissa, I mean, you hit it on related to AI, but is specifically, where does Gemini fall in a potential breakup? And of course, most likely that goes with the search business, which is where, call it, more than half the value is today.
Gene, while you were waiting in the wings, you probably heard that clip we played. What do you make of that comment that, I don't know, I'm paraphrasing, but they're tired of winning, or they're not winning anymore, or they're, that whole point about people not being in the workplace? Thoughts on that and the culture around Google?
First, it's true. I think that not only is Schmidt saying it, but also you have other people. Sundar has said that a couple quarters ago on their earnings call, said they've just kind of lost some of their fire. And that was part of some of these layoffs that we saw a lot of tech companies going through. Google, of course, went through some of that. They cut about 12% of their workforce. And so I think that that is true. I think that ultimately that's one of the ironic benefits of a breakup, is it just creates some urgency around the different businesses. And when you're a part of such a big company, it's kind of easy to get complacent. Super hard thing to do. Meta's done a great job of invigorating their culture, and I think Google still has a long way to go. We own Google. We think it's the best positioned company related to AI, but we wish that there was more urgency around that kind of spirit to win.
Hey, Gene, it's Karen. You sort of half answered it with Meta. It sounds like Meta sort of felt a fire under them. Do you think that the dynamic that Eric Schmidt was talking about is more broad than just Alphabet?
I mean, more broad in the sense of just kind of across tech in general. I think that I think Google set a culture. I mean, they were the original company that you'd go in at in the afternoon, and there'd be literally like these tents set up, and people would be eating sushi in the tents. I mean, it was kind of a cultural revolution that happened that I think captured a lot of tech. And so I think that we've seen that. I think this round of layoffs that we saw over the past couple of years, I think has changed some of that. But in general, I think that there is, I think amongst some of the big tech companies, there just isn't that same fire. And of course, related to venture and the startup culture, it's very different. They live in the office. This is something different. And that's the magic, I think, of what these companies need to do is, break off different groups that still have that startup mentality that really want to win.
Well, it sounds like it would be a win-win. You would unlock value. You would reignite that sort of entrepreneur culture that it once had if Google did break up. So wouldn't it be the ultimate Jedi mind trick if Alphabet just announced ahead of any sort of DOJ proposal that it's going to break up?
Huh. I mean, I would be doing somersaults. I would love that if they did that. I think that it would accomplish what you just described. I think the probability that that happens is exceptionally low, and I'll give you a quick reason why. They shouldn't be paying $50 billion a year in TAC. They're going to maintain that search share. They do that because they can increase that 6% a year to grow their search business by 14% a year. They want to pay that big TAC number because they want an insurance policy. It's part of their culture. I love the idea, Melissa. Of course, it was a low probability. I would put that I probably would take a trip to the moon before, if that does ultimately happen. You can hold me accountable to that.
All right. We got the tape. Gene, good to see you. Thank you.